Welcome everyone to PhD&D on YouTube. Cheers. So yesterday was a big day for tabletop role-playing games in the online community. Yesterday was BrigadeCon 2015. This is, for those of you that don't know, an online convention that runs for 24 hours, and it's just loaded with tabletop role-playing games. People running games all day long, dozens and dozens of games. I think there were over 200 hours of actual total events scheduled. So that includes the games, the cool idea in general, just an online, totally online convention. Um, and yes, there are others, but I don't know if they measure up, to tell you the truth. I'm probably not a good person to ask since I'm kind of biased, and I've never been to any of the others, but we're talking about BrigadeCon here. So what I wanted to do is reflect a little bit on how yesterday went. I did this last year. BrigadeCon 2014 was the first BrigadeCon, as well as my first BrigadeCon. And going into that one, I didn't know what to expect. This online convention, you're kind of like, what? Like, how does that work? How is that not just a bunch of videos? But that year and this year as well, but I knew it was coming this year, you leave feeling a lot more satisfied than just a bunch of videos. It feels like an actual convention where there's all these people gathered virtually to take part in these games, to play, to run them, to do panels. Then there's just dozens and dozens. There's probably hundreds and hundreds of people just in the comments alone, just watching, engaging in the chats, and it's just like you're surrounded by other gamers from the comfort of your own house. And there's all these events going on, and you're able to go like a real convention where you could go from one room to another. You can very easily, with just a click of the mouse, go to another game. And that's really, really cool that you can just kind of visit all these games going on at once, know that they're all a part of this convention. It just makes it really, really special. The other thing is that obviously BrigadeCon is free. I'm sure there's some convention out there, like an in-person convention, that's free, but I'm not aware of it. The big ones especially, they cost a lot of money, especially to be in events. To sign up to play in a game or to attend certain events can cost extra money on top of just a ticket for getting in the door. And BrigadeCon is completely free. Yes, it raises money for a great charity, Child's Play, but you're not required to donate to participate. It's highly encouraged, but there's plenty of people who just can't. And so it's nice to have a convention that's free, totally free, and you can be as involved as you want. Some of those real life conventions, I say real life, some of the in-person conventions, you have to pay per event you do. And so I know there are people yesterday in 3 or 4 events, and there's probably somebody who is in more than that at no extra charge. The only thing you're spending is your time and energy, and a lot of energy, because I know the people who were in a lot of events were drained at the end of yesterday, but in a good way. So it's just great that it's totally free. And in fact, you get free stuff. Not only is it free, but you're getting stuff with like the swag bag and entered for giveaways and that type of stuff. So it's just overall as a concept, it's very cool and it works very, very well. So yeah, now my reflections on specifically yesterday, I guess I've been talking about the idea of BrigadeCon so far. My reflections on how things went yesterday. Things went really well, in my opinion. I think it was a success overall. I don't think anything hindered it to the point where it really affected like the convention on a big level. I think there were plenty of like small, um, minute problems, but that's going to happen no matter what. I mean, people who couldn't get into the game they were trying to get into, or people who slept through events, no one in particular. Um, but that's going to happen. You know, you're not going to stop little things like that, but I don't think anyone let it ruin their experience. There was a little issue like at the very beginning with the swag bag where it wasn't as available as we would have liked it to be like early on, but then, you know, still before the actual convention kicked off, it was up and available. So it's not like even that was a big problem. So while there are things to definitely improve on in the coming years, I think it was an improvement over last year already. Um, and last year's was great, but I think it's just going to get better and better every single year. The talking about games yesterday, how the games went. There were so many games and such a variety of games that was the coolest thing. It was not just Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition all over the place. I say that because there were a lot of them, and it's obviously a very hot game right now. But there were tons of other systems. There were unique spins on 5th edition, not just like a typical fantasy adventure. There was like the god stomping game that I call it, where the giants were actually fighting the gods. Like that's just awesome. If you didn't watch that, do it. Um, so the variety of games that there were, and the fact that like 90 to 95% of the games actually like happened. You know, there's always going to be a game or two that fall out last minute, but there were hardly any at BrigadeCon. It was just so cool at the start of every like block of games to go around, visit all those channels, and see them up and going. Like, oh, all these guys are gaming already. They're already on it. Like that. To me, that's just awesome. So many games were played yesterday. Tons of people had fun. It's so cool to hear from the people who had not been to BrigadeCon before, or last year, I guess, that this was their first year and they were just blown away. That's the coolest thing to me. So games went very well. The panels this year, there was a good variety of panels as well. Some different topics, not all like just pertaining to like being a better dungeon master, which seems to be like a ton of panels always do that, not just BrigadeCon, but everywhere. This year you had panels on like psychological tropes on how to play role-playing games with kids, some tips on publishing in like the role-playing game world. So just some really interesting and really varied topics on panels as well. And I think, and like the terrain panel, that was great. I loved watching that. So the panels to me also went extremely well. I think both of these, again, were just taking last year and taking it just another step further. And I think that's what's going to happen next year. Just take that a one step further. This year, the last thing, like giveaways. Um, the sponsors that were so generous this year gave so many great digital prizes. And that was nice. Last year, yes, we had like Paizo and some physical prizes, but actually like shipping 47 or however many like novels that was. Bravo, Matt, by the way, for handling that last year. That's kind of a nightmare. Like that is time that could be better spent making a digital convention even better. So the fact that we saw the prizes kind of go more of that digital route this year, I think is such a positive thing because that's kind of the theme of the convention. I think there were still some physical prizes, which is nice this year, and they were handled very well. So again, a great slew of sponsors that were willing to donate products, so we have to appreciate that. So the giveaways and prizes, again, were great. The swag bag this year, I'm having trouble remembering what was in it last year already, so I can't really compare. But the swag bag this year was like top of the line products. Like just off the top of my head, like Tim's, the Mercanto's Lair, I think is the name of it, supplement, and like the Absolute Tabletop supplements. Like these are fantastic products. If you've looked at them, they were not just thrown together like last minute. Like these are great products for free. You just got them for not even necessarily coming to the convention. Like if you just kept up at all, you could have got the link to get free swag. So swag bag again, another step up. I'm gonna take some questions from the chat now and just see what people are saying. We'll kind of follow that into a Q&A. I don't know how much I can answer, but I do want to hear everyone watching. I want to hear your thoughts on how the convention went, what you did during the convention, and what do you think could have been done better? What do you think next year could be improved on? Or what are some ideas for next year even? Just be curious to see what everyone else's thoughts, not just mine, are on BrigadeCon. So let's see. In the chat from Wizard Dragon, what was the most important thing you took away from the talk with Sly Flourish? So I hosted the panel with Mike Shea from Sly Flourish last night and Matt from A Fistful of Dice, and we talked about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. We talked about how the first year went, where we think the game's headed, and then what have we learned about the actual game throughout this first year. I think we really dove into that. Like if you watched it, we talk about like the asymmetry of D&D 5th edition and then joke about how that could be like a thesis paper. The most important thing that I took away from the talk with Sly Flourish was, and it's kind of what I thought going into it, but he has a way of talking about RPGs that just really hits home with you. The asymmetry in 5th edition. So 5th edition is it's not a perfect system. It's a good system. It's a lot of fun. But what I took away from the talk most of all is that it's not a perfect system. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that sometimes I get in fanboy mode and I love everything about it and it could do no wrong. So to sit back and talk about the actual guts of it and what it is, you realize that it's not a perfect system and there's parts of it that might seem negative at first that are actually its strengths. And that's that asymmetry, the fact that, Fireball is a spell, use the same examples we did. Fireball is a spell that is completely and utterly like more powerful than so many other things that level. And somebody might say, well, that's not balanced, everything needs to be balanced. There needs to be a nice curve as you level up. And so they might see that as a negative, where we talked about how that can lead to some of the best story moments. Those little spikes, as he called it, in the curve, can lead to some of the best story moments. And I think when he said that if you're starting 5th edition, don't house rule stuff right away. Try your hardest to use the system as is to really see what it's capable of and to see what it's about. Hold off on house ruling as long as possible. And he brought in some good points where there's some parts that you might not like at first glance, but they deliver where it matters. His good example is he doesn't like, I think it's like the force cage spell, or I forgot the name of it, but it basically puts like a cage around something small enough and makes that thing just locked up. And one of his party members had it, and he didn't like that it could just take like a boss, lock it in a cage, and just basically win the fight right there. But he talks about how in this one instance, the villain or the creature in the cage actually like talks its way into winning the conversation. Like it defeats them socially, and they have this really cool story that happens after it. Watch the panel to actually see what he's talking about. But that feature that he did not like, that seemed so out of place and unbalanced, actually created some of their favorite moments in the game. And so I think 5th edition has a lot to offer. And this could be said about any, but I think what I took away is it has a lot to offer. Even if at first glance you're not liking something, just see what it can do first. Actually play it quite a bit with the rules as is to see what 5th edition is about before you house rule. So that's what I took away from it. Next question. Is there one thing in particular you've taken away from this year's BrigadeCon that you'd like to improve upon for the next one? Let's see. And then it follows up, Mike the Piper, welcome. If he follows up with, though I really like the setup, I was wondering if for next year, you guys would think of having a master of ceremonies who can direct viewers to the games and maybe give recaps of finished games. So I think this is my philosophy with everything. So you hear this on the channel. I think there needs to be a more core consistency with BrigadeCon. I think it's great. It's got a lot of moving pieces that I think could be combined and could be streamlined a lot more. I'm all for like simplicity and making everything easy. So I think you're right. I think for me it would be like the joining of games, the communication between the actual participants in the convention and the people behind the scenes that are actually making things run. Getting like players in contact with GMs in a better way. That was probably the biggest, not recurring issue, but the one that seemed to be the hardest to overcome when a player couldn't get a hold of a GM and the game's about to start. So I think I'd like to see a more streamlined like support team or support person even, and a more streamlined way for them to be able to help people. Like maybe somebody has all the GMs in like a chat somewhere and has the ability to private chat each GM. And so just the ability to communicate all around better, from players to GMs to organizers, all the way around, just a much more fluid communication system. The Master of Ceremonies idea, I think, is great. I think I highly doubt one person could do that for 24 hours because, as you've seen, like the few people who actually stayed up 24 hours, they were exhausted like halfway through. Like gaming takes it out of you. So I think having like some different shifts of like a master of ceremonies would be really, really cool. I think having some people that have, you know, a lot of knowledge about the convention, but then a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy. And then as soon as they start to fade, switching to a different master of ceremonies, I think having that centralized place, and this is what I'm talking about with like the simplicity and like the core consistency. I think a centralized place where people could feed to get basically in the doors to BrigadeCon. And I think the best way to do that, and don't quote me here, I don't even know if this is possible for the people actually running these parts, but I think a way like on the website, like on brigadecon.org would be the best. Some people don't use Facebook, Twitter, whatever else. Some people just don't know their way around those things. But if they could go to a page on the actual brigadecon.org and like see somebody talking like, hey, this game's going on right now, click on this link. Don't forget to miss this panel going on right here, click here. There's tons and tons of like website work that would go behind that, so it might be like too much. But at the same time, like if it could happen, it'd be fantastic. It would be great. So again, don't quote me because I really, really don't know how that could actually work. Let's see here. Largely contained. So the next question would be, Most people involved watch each other, ran games for each other, largely contained. How would you reach out to those outside of the actual like brigade group on Facebook to get them involved too? And that's another good question. I think that actually goes back to what I was saying with if it could be, I guess the central location this year, if there was one, was probably like the BrigadeCon Facebook page, not the actual group, but the page. Um, and if that could be on the actual website where people could just go to brigadecon.org, they could get involved there. They could sign up for any games. They could learn about any games. They could contact like a support person or team if they had questions or needed help. And then, like I said, the master of ceremonies, if it was more centralized and more of a core concept, these are just words I'm spitting out, but if it was more centralized and more consistent around its core, which I believe, in my personal opinion, is a website, then I think it'd be easier to reach out. I think in the months leading up to BrigadeCon, there could be like a campaign to reach out to people in other circles. So I'm not on Reddit at all. I don't know a damn thing about Reddit, but having somebody like a Reddit liaison with BrigadeCon, having, let's see what else, having people go out and find groups on Twitter, finding other Facebook groups, because there's a ton of groups on Facebook for role-playing games, having liaisons to go out and actually advertise, number one, but then be willing to answer questions, to explain it to these different communities, and then to invite these different communities, to say like, it's not just here's BrigadeCon, this date, go. No, to actually do like an invitation, like come sign up for games. Like, do you want to run a game at a convention, at an online convention? Do you want to be a part of this? Because we want you to be a part of this. And I think that would be very, very cool, honestly. Um, so yeah, I guess what my thoughts are, it comes down to actually having, just being more centralized, and steps were taken this last year towards having a better website, towards having some of these things I think that I'm talking about. But there's a lot of work that goes into it, and the people doing the work again are volunteers, and the amount that they've done thus far is amazing. So I would never ask of the people organizing to do more, but I think you'll start to see more and more because they can just build off of previous years and continue to actually make that better. Let's see. Other question. Would a single well-advertised celebrity game have more effect at raising money? Is the fundraising side effect or the main goal? So number one, probably not. I don't think a celebrity game would actually like raise significantly more money unless it was somebody seriously like Chris Perkins himself, or like Will Wheaton. This is a hobby where celebrity is, people can be very well known and very well versed, but to actually get a big draw and big pull that would affect like donations on that level, I think you're talking about somebody that'd be very hard to actually get in BrigadeCon. We had some huge names this year. I mean, we had Sly Flourish, we had Rodney Thompson, and not for the purpose of raising more money, but just because they're fun people that people want to see. It's really cool when they can come in and be a part of it. So I think actually, and I don't speak on behalf of BrigadeCon again, I think the purpose is to have fun and raise money for a good charity. But I don't think it's not run from a standpoint of every single little decision is based on will this get us more money towards the charity? Will this get us more money towards the charity? And I think that's actually a strength of the con, is that it does really well at promoting the charity and getting people to drive and push and donate to this great charity, but it's not it doesn't take the focus off of everything else either. They do a good job of balancing that and raising money, but at the same time making sure that the actual convention, the games, and everything else have that fun focus, where the charity is promoted, but it's not shoved down people's throats, or required, like I said, to donate or anything. So again, I give long, drawn out answers, but I think a single well advertised celebrity game would have to be on the level of like Acquisitions Incorporated, to actually pull like just tons more people in. And I don't know that that's necessarily the goal. So yeah, hopefully that answers it. Mike the Piper, BrigadeCon could have a couple of members to begin setting up the YouTube page with broadcasts and information and begin hyping it. And again, I think that's a good idea, having like, and I don't know the logistics of the actual BrigadeCon's YouTube page. It's like this mythical dragon that I think exists, but very few people know if like it actually exists. And so there's better people to ask in regards to that. But I think that would be a strength, is having that central location. Again, I'm going to go back to the website, but it'd probably be run through like a YouTube channel, just embedded on the actual website, having like that live broadcasts. I'm not familiar with Twitch either, at all. I know it's live streaming and there's people that play games on it. That's all I know. So I think maybe there's something there where I don't know if Twitch can be like embedded in some way, like for a live stream. I know Google or YouTube's making strides to make their live streaming better. Like they're taking steps now, to kind of try and compete a little bit with Twitch. I don't know if compete's the right word, but they're trying to make it better so that they are a platform where you can do that. So maybe by next year they will have a great live streaming setup that would things that went well. I think actually all the things where I'm saying like next year I hope this happens, or I hope this goes better next year, none of it went poorly this year, by any means, at least from my point of view. You may disagree, definitely let me know in the comments. But I don't think anything went poorly. I think it's just always a good idea to reflect and think about, how did BrigadeCon go? How did I, as a viewer, feel BrigadeCon went? What did I see? What did I enjoy? What did I maybe not enjoy? And coming up with what I did not enjoy is actually very tough. I wish I could have seen every single event live. That's just not possible. So that's just getting greedy. But like I said, it's the great convention because everything's recorded and posted, for viewing right after it. So that is another huge strength to it. Keep posting in the chat if you guys have more questions. I'm not looking at the comments on the page right now. So if you're posting in the comments, please try to throw it in the chat or I might miss it. But I think each year, like I said, it's just going to take a step up. It's just going to build off the past. The thing is, like, the people organizing it, and then the people involved in playing and giving feedback, gamers are like a smart bunch. They're a very smart bunch. They're good at this type of stuff. It's not, the convention I don't think is ever going to go down a year, like dip, like get a lot worse. I think it's just going to continue to build, like, one, to give a terrible cliche, it's going to build like one long campaign that just builds all the way up. Let's see. Some other stuff in the chat here. I would say a lack of nerd funk clinging to your clothes and the post-con flu means this is not a real convention. Now I could definitely see where you're coming from there, because I've heard of these amazing things. I do know, however, a number of individuals from this year's convention that had RPG hangovers today. And so I would fight back with, yes, this is a real convention. There were hangovers, gaming hangovers. Best person to get in contact with to volunteer to help at next year's con, I would get on Facebook and I would go to just look up BrigadeCon. I think the picture is actually of a t-shirt right now. Let me double check. That's not going to get me there. Yeah, I think it's a picture of the actual t-shirt. So look up BrigadeCon on Facebook. It's just a community page. Is that last year's shirt? I think that's last year's shirt. Huh. Nobody noticed. Anyways, go to BrigadeCon on Facebook, the actual community page, not the group of the RPG Brigade. Go to the page and send a message, post on the wall, just say, hey, I'd like to volunteer next year. I'd like to help out. And then whoever is going to actually be in charge of that, whoever's going to work with getting the organizers set up, they're going to see that. That's going to get to the right people. So the convention organizers, to tell you the truth, fluctuate slightly from year to year. At least I say year to year. There have been 2 years. But the change up, obviously, there's a somewhat different group of people each year. There's a couple or a handful that have done both, but it kind of changes a little bit. So just make sure it goes to that page, because whoever's working on it is going to actually see that, or it's going to get to the right people. And yeah, definitely volunteer, help out. It's all volunteers. It's not paid or anything. No one, and it's kind of like do what you can. Don't try to put more on your plate than you can handle. Don't offer to do a bunch of stuff and then not be able to, but help out where you can. I don't see any more questions. I'll leave it open for about another 2 to 3 minutes while I try to come up with interesting things to say and keep people watching. Post in the comments, though, what your favorite events were. I'm going to talk now about my favorite events, favorite panel, and favorite game that I've watched, and then why they were my favorites, and then hopefully check out your guys' in the comments. So I've not seen everything yet, obviously. I watched as much as I could yesterday. I did not get to see a single game start to finish. I watched most of a handful of games. And my favorite one to watch so far it's got to be the one, what was the name? I don't know the name. Anyways, I think Lloyd ran it. I think it was like the Giants that fought the gods, like a high level D&D 5e game. That was just epic in every sense of that word. Looked like a ton of fun to play in, but it's something you don't see all the time. Like, it's not something you're sick of seeing. Like, I don't have another example, but you're just not used to seeing that, giants slaying gods and vice versa. And I think, and I told Matt this, and I'm gonna do it, but when spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the game and you don't want to know part of the ending, mute this for a little bit. All right, here we go. At the end of that game, Matt from A Fistful of Dice's character dies. This giant dies. And I think he gets like a spear through him. He falls from this place super high up. He just like falls like through the clouds and like disappears. And he just kind of falls off of where this battle was. And I told Matt that that'd be the coolest start to a campaign ever, or the coolest setting ever, right where that giant lands. Like, if it lands like on an actual like planet or something, or like on a city, boom, you have the start of one of the greatest campaign settings or campaign stories ever. I don't care who you are, that is awesome. And so that's part of the reason that's my favorite game. But mostly because if you watch it, it's just epic. It's another level of D&D that you're just not used to seeing. And so the whole time you're just like, it's like a big action-packed movie where you're just getting blown away by what is actually happening throughout it. So that's my favorite game thus far. My favorite panel thus far, that's tough. Man, they were good ones. I think I've seen almost every panel all the way through. I've got, I think, 2 or 3 where I've got to watch part of them still. God, they were all so good. To pick one, just to have to pick one, I'm going to pick the terrain panel with Mini Terrain Domain and friends, probably because I learned a lot from every panel, but terrain is a topic that I'm interested in that I knew very little about. Like, I was uncomfortable starting or getting into terrain because I knew so little about what to do. And so I gained so much from that panel. They were entertaining. They're awesome guys, and they just put on such a cool panel. And so I'm going to pick that one as my favorite. I liked all of them. Every single panel just was great. Just so high quality as far as like what you're actually getting out of them. So those are my 2 favorite events. Post yours in the comments below. I'd love to know what the favorite games were, what the favorite panels were, what your favorite giveaways were, like the favorite prizes. We do have some more questions or comments here in the chat. So let's see here. Most in-person conventions run Pathfinder Society and D&D Adventure League. These have advantage of having a sense of continuity that one-shots lack. I didn't see any games of this sort hosted. Is this a problem, or are one-shots enough? I think, don't quote me on this, I think there was a game or 2 in the convention that they ran one last year. Like it was like either another chapter of it, or I don't know if it was just the same game ran again. I think there were like 1 or 2. I'll have to check on that. I don't think it's a problem, but at the same time, I think one-shots are enough. Like what we had is enough, I think. Enough to have a good convention, because we did. But I feel like it would be really cool to have like a Pathfinder Society game or a D&D Adventurers League game. I don't know if those are like officially sanctioned or whatever, but it'd be cool to have that be a part of this, to tie in those actual like companies. You know, they're running these like seasons or these series at stores all over the US, in the world, but it'd be really cool to have those weave like into BrigadeCon and to see a D&D Adventures League game, or even to have a game every year on BrigadeCon that continues. Like I said, we may have had 1 or 2 that have already done this, but I think that's a cool idea. And I also think, I thought about doing this and I just never pulled the trigger, having a season of, similar to like D&D Adventures League, but it could be a custom homemade one where on somebody's channel these things build up. And I think it'd be really cool to see like the final chapter, the big bad evil guy session at BrigadeCon. I think that'd be really cool. Another one, the one that I almost set up, was more of a competition one where like the finale was BrigadeCon, something like a series of one-shots where there was like gladiators in an arena, and then like the final gladiator fight, the person who was going to win their freedom would have been like at BrigadeCon with like the big crowd and everything, and it'd be like PvP sort of, and that's territory I don't want to get in right now. But I think things like that would be cool, where it's not just a one-shot on the convention. And I think as the games expand and as the schedule expands and we get more and more games every year, I think that would be only natural that you're going to see those things come up. I watched 5 panels, including yours, that were really enjoyable. That being said, it felt the con was missing a cherry. What, in your opinion, would push it to the next level? Um, that being said, that's a good question. Let's see. Give me a second. I'm going to come back to that one. One thing PAX and the Acquisitions Inc. had was a highlight, consistent characters, consistent story that attracts a lot. So each year the con has a landmark. And yeah, I think I touched on that a little bit. That I think that would be something that's cool, where you're seeing it a little bit every year, just like Acquisitions Inc. Okay, so back to the missing. I felt the con was missing a cherry. What, in your opinion, would have pushed it to the next level? That would be, oh man, that's a toughie. I think a lot of things can obviously take it to the next level. I think some of the things we've talked about in this video, but I think also, I think there's a ton of unexplored ideas out there, like that I'm not going to be able to say because I can't come up with them. But I think somebody's going to have that idea that's going to take it to the next level. They need to share it. I don't know if a panel, I don't like when you talk about like a celebrity game or like a consistent game that's going to get a lot of pull. Like the first one that comes to mind, I mean, obviously Acquisitions Inc. is very famous, but the Provokers, the fan base that an actual game has, I don't know if there is one like the actual Provokers game. And so to see, I don't know, I'm not involved on a level where I would know anything about if that would work for them to do one on BrigadeCon. I know a ton of people that would love to see that. So I'm going to put that idea in the air, but maybe having it culminate with putting a Provokers game in the final slot or something. And then those guys usually do the closing ceremony. And so it'd be just a really cool transition from a big session of them right into like a closing ceremony. And I don't know if it would actually block out the last chunk of the con. Like I don't think they would ever be the only game running like for the last 3 or 4 hours or whatever. But I think it'd be cool to have them be one of those final games that just kind of feeds right over into a closing ceremonies of some kind. I think that'd be cool. But again, there could be a much better idea out there than mine. I'm curious to who asked that question. Missing a cherry. What, in your opinion, would bring it to the next level? What do you think would bring it to the next level? I'm curious. Anybody watching, put it in the chat. What do you think is going to take BrigadeCon to the next level? Intertwining the one-shots so that each group communicates their results with a coordinator and a final session is run with the main group, but the session is influenced by all the ones preceding it. Yes, I think, again, that's one of the things I was at least trying to touch on as ideas. I think it would also be cool, and I totally spaced this, but the Star Wars, the Tides of Change ran games, I think, throughout the entire convention. So they're a very well-organized, very entertaining group that puts together Star Wars games that have these intertwining stories. Where not only that, but the Tide votes, where like the audience can actually vote on big things that happen in game. So that's a big thing for BrigadeCon, I think. And I totally forgot to mention that. Next thing, I thought everything went well. I thought you guys did a good job. Thank you. There were some people that did a lot of work, and I applaud them. They really made it very special. I like your idea about competition. I'm thinking of cosplay and other conventions. Hobby has many pillars of talent to base completion on. DMs, role-playing, world building. Yeah. So I feel like by next year, there's going to be something. I think there's going to be something that wasn't there this year, like some big thing. And I think maybe it's like some of these ideas that we're talking about right now, where maybe it is a build-up, maybe it is like a gladiator tournament, maybe one very willing DM would run a gladiator tournament the day of BrigadeCon, or you could have different DMs. You'd have 5 different DMs throughout the day or whatever, and then the final one runs like the final group or whatever. I think that'd be cool. You got to be careful with competition though, because that's so not what this hobby is about. It's not competition, and I think 99% of people could handle it, could handle the PvP, but anytime you get into it, there's always 1 or 2 people who are so competitive that it gets away from them, and I don't think it'd be tough. You wouldn't want that to take away from the rest of the convention. You don't want anybody to have a bad experience, and I feel like some people in that situation are just going to have one if they wouldn't win. But again, I could be totally wrong. Go on next tier, Crucible of Champions. I remember that. Suggesting Android Gladiator Arena. Having a bracket and then having the finals. Yeah, these are all things that I think would be really cool. They just have to be somebody much smarter than myself would have to get involved with these. I think if a lot of people got involved, they could make this something really cool, just like a mini tournament that also happens during BrigadeCon. I think you have to be careful. Coming up with these really cool, really big ideas. You always want to take things to the next level, and you always want to take the convention to the next level. But the convention as is, the BrigadeCon that happened last year and the one that just happened yesterday, they were great. There were so many things about yesterday, just the how laid back it is, where you can just join a game, have fun. You're playing tabletop role playing games, and I think that you can't lose sight of that. I think you can't lose sight of that special factor that plenty of people who were in this convention enjoyed things just as they were. And I think as long as you can still provide that type of environment for them, then you can always take something to the next level. But I think you can't ever overshadow it and lose sight of the fact that we're just trying to get some gamers together and have fun. So it's a very fine line. I think it's a very, very fine balance that you have to watch. Let's see. Some more in here. Pretty sure I registered on the web page, but never heard anything from anyone. Was that something that happened to other people? I'm not sure. Again, I was not involved with like the website, so don't quote me. I'm pretty sure if you register on the website, you were included in like the list for drawings, like the prizes for sure. I think that's where we got like contact information, like email addresses and names for the big list of people where we did the randomizer and gave away prizes. I think that's where the names were included. But again, if you have questions, reach out on the BrigadeCon Facebook page, the community page, just to ask, because there might be somebody better to answer that than me, to tell you the truth. Let's see, go to summer camp when I was younger. After bonding, we had this momentum to stay in touch. I had the same at certain camps. How do you keep the excitement, connections, community building post-convention? I think the best answer is just continuing to game. I think now that BrigadeCon's over, I think the worst thing that people could do is stop playing games and just talk about games. And I think it's a good community in the fact, especially with like the one-shot group, where there's a ton of gaming going on. So I think the best thing people can do is keep gaming with each other. BrigadeCon is this great thing that's one day a year where you can meet people, you can do these games, have fun at a convention, but then there's 364 other days where you can game with these people. You can still game with them, you can still do things with them, and I think just continuing to push that and build those relationships every single other day is just going to make BrigadeCon better every year. And it's going to be more rewarding for those people to keep playing outside of the convention every single year. Is there a master list of videos? Yeah, list on the BrigadeCon page, and the schedule is like clickable as well, to where you can go to the exact links for most events that we had a link on. And then I do know some people were putting together playlists on their channels of a lot of events. So I think I'm doing a lot of thinking, not giving you a lot of facts today, am I? I think Ian Christensen did a playlist of panels. Let me check real quick. I could probably put a link in the chat. Real quick. But yeah, like a master list, and those are things that I think on a unified core website, it could really benefit by having something like that, like an archive where you can see the events after they happened, and everybody knows it's there. Whereas right now there's some information in some different places, and not terribly scattered. I mean, most people have found things, but I think if everybody knew that everything they needed was at brigadecon.org, I think that would be a plus. But again, I'm not the one coding the website, and I know that that is a ton of work. So let's see. Fantastic Dimensions has done 2 playlists. His 2 playlists on his channel, I will link in the chat. The chat disappears at the end of this, I think, so I'll try to put it in the comments. There's a link to Ian's playlists, and you're going to see a BrigadeCon 2015 panels playlist. Looks like it has 11 videos. And then 2015, the games playlist with 42 videos. I don't know the count on how many panels and how many games there were, but that sounds pretty close. So he does have a list out. That's nice. That's really nice. I'm going to go share that on my Facebook page in a little bit. So unless there's any other questions here in the next minute, we'll wrap up. I've rambled a lot longer than I thought I would. So thanks to everyone in the chat for bringing your questions. Leave comments on the actual video of what you liked about the convention, what you didn't like. Head over to BrigadeCon Facebook page and also add them there. Give feedback. That's the best way anything's going to get better, is with suggestions and feedback from people that were involved. And a big thanks to the organizers of the convention, the sponsors of the convention, giving us some awesome swag to give away. And then the biggest thanks to just everyone involved that ran games, played in games, watched games. You make the convention actually tick and go, and that's truly amazing. So thanks everybody for watching. This has been my reflections on BrigadeCon 2015 for what they're worth. Go on, keep gaming, like we said, in the off season, right? Make sure you're just still gaming as much as possible with these people. Keep your connections up, and then hopefully we'll see you all at BrigadeCon 2016. Have a good one, everybody.